Welcome to the Travel-Free Digital Conference Series. I'm Alberto Lopez, Systems Engineer for Agritecture Consultant, and now we have Olivier Frey talking about disruptive agricultural technologies. Olivier, please share your screen and start the presentation.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. I'm Olivier Frey. I'm a French consultant specialized in farmer co-ops, and I've been working for the last few years on how digital is going to transform agriculture and also cooperatives. So I'm going to talk to you today about two main important changes. That is, firstly, blockchain, and secondly, artificial intelligence. So if you take a look first at the context, there are several forces that are changing agriculture today and that are going to change agriculture in the future. One of the first is the demographic changes. We are expecting like 11 billion people on the planet Earth by 2050. So it means that agriculture is going to have to increase the production and the yield. So there are several changes for that digital is going to help the farmers getting better at crops and yields and better at farming. The other very important force is the fact that today consumers are getting more and more power regarding the food they are eating. So they want more transparency on where the food comes from, what's inside the food they are eating. Are the pesticides, or the animals are fed, sorry. So they want really more transparency, and they can find more and more information by using their smartphone or their internet connection and looking at the products and scan a QR code to get more information about what they are going to eat. Another force is the food technology and innovation. That means not only agriculture is changing, but also the way food is produced. The agribusiness companies are also using more and more digital to have a better supply chain, for example, or to use digital instead of papers, etc. There's also the way, how can I, as a consumer, consume more sustainably? So in order to avoid too much climate change, it's going to be climate change anyway, but how can I, as an individual, put less pressure on climate change? So there's also another force that is health and wellness, meaning that people are more and more looking for food as something healthy and not eating maybe less junk food, but better to cook raw products, for example, and eat less transformed products. And then there's also the global food system is going to change with more and more globalization. But maybe this year we'll see with the COVID-19, it might have an impact on these global food systems. And then there's also the resource sustainability, meaning we have to grow more food, but with less inputs. If we go to agriculture, we can see that it's technically one of the least digitalized industry in the economic sector. It's at the bottom. Everything is in red, but there are many factors that might improve the digitalization of the industry. First, agtech investments have exploded. So it means that more and more startups are getting money. More and more startups are created to help farmers produce better food, produce more food at a better price. The last numbers, for example, in 2019, it's around $7.6 billion that have been injected in AgTechs. And another thing that's going to change is the amount of data that is generated by each farm. So there are more and more IoTs on the farm because the cost of IoT has decreased. So you can put even more and more connected objects on the farm that will collect data either on the weather or on the animals. For example, you can put some cameras inside the barn to look at the animals. You can put sensors on the animal, on his neck, for example, to check if he's moving differently or maybe he's nervous or something. You can also put sensors in the ground. That's going to be very important also to analyze the ground or the ground is moving and how you can have a better crop. So basically, all these sensors will be multiplied on farms. So it means the data that is generated will grow even further. But if we look, for example, at the cost of food also today, it's estimated to be between 30 and 40 billion dollars today. If we take a look at Walmart, for example, tried a few years ago to check how a mango, they went to the store and they took a mango and they said, okay, let's trace this mango back to its roots, to where it was grown. And it took them 6 days and 18 hours to do so. Another factor is that today, 1 in 10 person in the world is going to fall ill every year from eating contaminated food. And also the waste, 1.3 billion tons of food are lost or wasted every year. So it means there's a lot to do. And for all these problems, digital can help. And when I say digital, it's going to be this time, we're going to focus on blockchain and artificial intelligence. So I'm convinced, and many others also, many experts are convinced that those two, artificial intelligence and blockchain, are going to be the future, and they really have the power to change agriculture. So I'm not going to explain what is blockchain now. I can give you later some references if you want, but I'm just going to focus on a few use cases of blockchain in the food chain. So for example, blockchain today, it can allow for instant payment. For example, there's a startup in Australia called AgriDigital who implemented smart contracts that get grain farmers, when they bring the grain, they get instant payment with the smart contract. There's also, it's going to simplify some transactions. A lot of transactions regarding grain, for example, are already made or are still made, I would say, with paper, some facts and everything. And with blockchain, it's going to simplify that. So Louis Dreyfus, which is one of the biggest grain transporter, I would say, they sold soybeans to China using blockchain, and they managed to process everything 5 times faster than if they would have done it with paper, for example. There's also a faster identification. I talked about Walmart experiment with the mango just before that. It took them 6 days, and they tried a blockchain, and it took them, with the blockchain, with the help of blockchain, 2.2 seconds to do the same thing. So you see, it's going to be faster when there's a problem. If there's a blockchain, it's going to be faster to move backwards and find the exact point where there was a problem. And so it's going to be better when you have to recall some back products. So another thing is the enhanced transparency. Today, consumers want to know more and more where their food comes from. So with blockchain, you can put every node of the food chain on the blockchain. So each step you can go backwards, and then you can put a QR code on the packaging of the product, and with you can scan this QR code with your smartphone, and then you can see all the information where the food has been grown, was the transportation at the right temperature and everything. So it's really the transparency in the food chain. There's also another way in some underdeveloped countries to put trust back between the farmers and the people who sell, who buy the product. So with the use of blockchain, there's some kind of contract. So the farmers, the small farmers, they are sure they're going to be paid the right price with the help of blockchain. There's also Connecting Food, a French startup working on blockchain, is doing some real-time certification. So it means they have a blockchain and they certify, for example, that if you have a blockchain on milk, they're certified that the cows have gone outside a certain amount of time. They have seen the sun. So they have a caller that is recording the number of hours they spent outside. There's also a way to certify that it's organic. So it's mainly all this certification is done at the real time. There's also some kind of consumer reinsurance as well. So if I check a product that is on the blockchain, I scan the product with the QR code and I can see everything, and I get more trust in the brand. I trust the brand more. This is what Carrefour has done, and this is what Carrefour is doing for, I think they will have like 100 products that are traced with blockchain. And it can also be a recognition of know-how. For example, in Ireland, there's a beer that has put a blockchain, so you can see how the beer was made from the scratch. So it's some kind of way to recognize the know-how of crafted products. And I've also put here now, going back to artificial intelligence. Those are a few examples of how artificial intelligence can be used in animal breeding, for example. There's a Quintus who is using some machine learning to automatically identify the animals. So there's some cameras inside the barn, and they use this algorithm to automatically identify the animals. There's also a company from Quebec called Romain, which uses this time machine learning, but to determine what is the best time to inseminate the sows. So they have a color, and the way the sow is moving indicates that it's the right time because they are in heat. There's another startup called Connectera that is automatically monitoring the behavior of animals. So they have some data from the past, from if the animals are quiet, they have data, and if the animal starts to move, the algorithm with the computer vision, they can also determine that something is wrong, something is not as usual with the animal. There's another startup that is using this time some data. So they put microphone in the barn, and with some algorithm, they can manage to say, this is the sound of a little pig that is being crushed by his mother. Because when they are newborn, sometimes the sow is just lying down on the little pigs, and this is when they are under the sow, they just cry and it can recognize the sounds. And another startup is working this time directly on milk, and by analyzing the milk in real time, they use computer vision and some kind of deep learning algorithm to predict the presence and the concentration of problems inside the milk. But there's also artificial intelligence in grains and vineyards. There's going to be, I think, some great interest in that because with computer vision and algorithm in like machine learning or deep learning, it's possible now to detect a weed that from a real plant. So it means that if you detect the weed at the right place, you can put the right amount of pesticide or herbicide to kill it. So they say it can reduce the use of pesticide by 80%. There's also the identification of diseases and pests inside the plants. So this time it's also through pictures. It takes pictures and it can automatically determine this is a pest or not. Another way to use artificial intelligence in agriculture is, of course, robotic. So autonomous robots that can directly pick fruits. So abundant robotics made, for example, the first commercial robotic apple crop in March last year. So it means that the robot can just by itself move into the field and pick. It recognizes the shape of the apple. It can pick the apple automatically. So this is really important for robotics as well. Another way is to improve the seeds. So with some machine learning algorithm, Indigo managed to predict which microbes are the most beneficial for the plant health. And another way would be also for crop insurance, meaning this time S4 is an Argentinian startup that uses satellite images to analyze the crops and decide if it can get money because the crop is damaged or not. So how is it going to impact agriculture? Intel made a study and they concluded that by using artificial intelligence and robotic intelligent farm equipment will help farmers produce 70% more food by 2050. And according to Accenture, artificial intelligence has the potential to increase global agricultural productivity by 53% by 2035. Of course, it's going to be impressive projection increase. It's going to have a huge impact, but real farmers allow all this technology to come on the farm. This is another topic. I thank you for that. You can find everything to contact me if you ever need. You have my email, you have my website. You can go on the website, even though the website for the moment is in French.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Really interesting talking about the advantages of artificial intelligence and blockchain. My biggest concern, especially in all technologies in agriculture, is how to introduce these technologies to the farmers, because as we know, is one of the biggest problems in agriculture.
Yeah. So what you have to understand regarding digital, for example, is that the first users of GPS, for example, were farmers, because they like technology. You have to understand that farming is not something old, and farmers have really understood that technology can help. So the way to do it is to convince farmers that this technology works. So you don't go talk to the farmers if your product is only 50 or 60% accurate. You have to go and talk to them if you have a 90% product.
Okay, so that was my follow-up question. So do you think, like, the precision, what is the actual precision, let's say, I don't know, to predict, like using machine learning to predict, I don't know, the times when the cow may be inseminated. So what is that level of precision that we are currently, and does the investment of these technologies for the farmer, is it worth it to the level of precision that we are right now, or do we have to wait for better models? Like what is the current situation with this?
So the thing you have to understand with machine learning is that the more you use it, the more it's going to be accurate. It means that the more you feed the algorithm with data, the more it's going to be accurate. So at the moment, the companies, they don't all talk about the percentage of accuracy of the algorithm. But I think the farmer, the thing they have, the startups have to understand is that, for example, if you are a startup that uses artificial intelligence to help grain farmers, the grain, it only happens once in a year, for example.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's different if you use it on animals, for example, because you have several animals, but you only have one crop every year for grain. So it might be easier. It's like vineyards also. You only have one each year. So it might be easier to use it to convince animal farmers than grain or vineyard producers.
But then, so at the current stage, so we're basically setting platforms and setting different means to for data recollection. So now data is the big asset, right? So so when you talk or when you tell a company or where a company wants to go and say like, let's use artificial intelligence. So first you have to say like, okay, do you have the data? How many data points do you have? How many data points do you need to get to a precise model, right? So those are the questions that you may have to ask yourself instead of jumping straight into the actual artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, you will need data. And when we talk about data, it can be huge amount of data because to have an algorithm that is accurate, you need a lot of data. And so you will need more and more sensors first. You have to invest in sensors, I guess, like, for example, weather sensors, soil sensors. So this is the first investment for the farmer. So they invest in the sensors, but then they collect the data and they need someone to analyze the data. So they need to share the data with someone. But are you willing, if you are, for example, a European farmer, are you willing to give your data to an American company, for example? Mm-hmm. So those are also problems of who do I give my data to?
But then this comes like to the process of the trust, traceability, and all these type of things from data, and that can be enabled also by the other technology you talk about, like blockchain. So that comes to a point where who owns the data at the end? So no one owns the data. There's just a part of recollection and a part of processing, and then the final result is an improvement in efficiency of the crop or improvement in determination of the amount of milk that a cow may produce or something like this, right?
But for me, it's not only a matter of who owns the data, because if the data is raw, if you just collect the data, it has no value. It's what you do, what you can analyze, what algorithm you're gonna use that is giving value to those data.
Okay, so like your advice, what will be your advice for a new startup trying to get into the farming business, not into the technology business, but into the farming business? So your take is the biggest or the most important investment they can make is on acquiring this data. So setting up the channels to acquire data.
For me, the first thing they have to do is gain trust. They have to go on the field, talk to the farmers, explain to them what they are going to get if they give the data. Trust is the key in agriculture for me. If you are a startup, you have to understand that. If you get the trust from the farmers, if understand what they're gonna get if they give you the data, then it might be okay.
But that's becoming like the actual part of the analysis of the data. What I'm talking about is from the part, if I want to build a vertical farm, if I want to build a farm, so from that part, and then I want to create a data set, like a database, so that later, after I recollect, I don't know, a given amount of data points, I can give it to one of these companies, and then they will analyze, and then they will correlate, and they will see the uses of
Yeah.
whatever the data I'm recollecting. But then, so that is an important advice. So recollect the data. So build.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, another way to collect more data would be, for example, to create a data co-op that several farmers. If you create a data co-op between several farmers, all the farmers will own this co-op, and they will pull the data to the co-op, and the goal, the objective of the co-op will be to sell the data to the startups or big companies who have algorithms that they can use the data with and give back a service to the farmers.
Okay. Interesting. And then, well, so we are talking about the advantages of this type of technologies. What do you think will be in the future, like the disadvantages? So what can go wrong?
What can go wrong? For example, the artificial intelligence, what could go wrong is that some farmers use an algorithm that doesn't work, that they thought would work, but if they try it for 1 year, say, maybe they will lost all the crop because they use an algorithm that is not good. So the problem is that the time of agriculture is slow, and the time of those startups is quick. So there might be a problem between the two worlds. Another problem for me, for example, if we take blockchain, I think blockchain, everyone will have to use it because it's getting more and more popular. The Walmart is using it, Carrefour is using it. All the big retailers are going to go into blockchain. So if you don't want to use a blockchain, then maybe you will get in trouble in 5 or 10 years because everybody will use a blockchain to trace
But
the production.
that's part of the technology. So it only works if everyone uses it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So
Okay.
is blockchain going to be in 10 years what everybody uses? Maybe. For the moment, we don't have many blockchains. The blockchain projects are still new, so we don't know exactly if it works or not. How can we use blockchain? Most of the projects now are still in proof of concept, so we don't have we have to see in a few years if it works or not.
Okay. Yeah, but based on like the impact, as you mentioned before, on the potential impacts that this technology, so it's traceability, trust, all this,
Yeah.
do you see like let's say new trends or new added value for the products that are produced in this type or that are traced using this type of systems? So do you see like the consumer, because now as you explained before, people are getting curious, or it's more important now for people to understand where the product come from, how it's treated and all this. So do you think it's an added value, or it will create added value for this for each product?
I think for the moment it can be an added value, but in the future it's going to be the norm. If you don't have a blockchain, if you didn't trace your products, then maybe people will not want to buy your product because they will fear something is wrong with it.
Okay.
So I think brands are going to be more and more transparent towards consumers. And if you are a brand that is not transparent in the future, then maybe people will say, why are not they transparent if the other brand is? Is there something they use? Do they use more pesticides? Do they use GMOs or something? It's like the brand is hiding something. So I guess it's also a way, if you don't use, say, blockchain into the future and all your competitors are using it, it might mean that you want to hide something to the consumers. So for me, it's a question of trust also.
Okay. Yeah, and of time until this technology is ready, like to be applied into the food chain. No, very interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned that maybe there's a possibility to have some resources or something. Can you tell?
Yeah.
What are you working on right now?
At the moment, I'm working on a study about blockchain in the food chain. So it should be done in a few weeks, I guess. It's gonna be. I'm studying all the projects that are happening for the last 2 years and all the companies that are working on blockchain. And I'm trying to focus also on some use cases and what can blockchain bring for transparency in the food chain. I'm also working on a totally different topic regarding the farmer co-ops. I'm doing a study at the moment on the biggest farmer co-ops in Europe, and I'm studying the financial reports, and I'm also looking at the way they're communicating about extra financing, things like the CO2, the water use, and how they can compare to each other.
Okay, so if people want to learn more about this topic, do you have some recommendations? Where can they get some resources?
Yeah, they can send me an email and I can send them some references, and they can also maybe from time to time, they can go on my website. I have a blog where I put, for example, one infographic about blockchain in the food chain. I did it 2 years ago. It's 2 years old now. I have to make it up to date, but I think I will do it in the following weeks.
Okay, perfect. So I will keep a lookout, and thank you very much, Olivier, for the presentation.
Thank you, Alberto. Goodbye.
Bye.